Sarah found the first note tucked under her apartment door. It was a simple white envelope, no name, no return address, just her apartment number, 3B, scrawled in thick red ink. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked it up. The paper felt expensive, heavier than she expected. Inside, a single folded card. "Your eyes shine like the morning sun," it read. The handwriting was neat, too neat, almost like a child trying very hard to be perfect. She told herself it was probably a silly prank, maybe from someone at work, but a small cold knot began to form in her stomach. It felt too deliberate, too personal for a simple joke. She tried to dismiss it. She had a busy week. Deadlines loomed, coffee helped, but the image of the red ink stayed. It was the color of blood, not fresh blood, old, dried blood. Later that day, another note appeared. This time, it was on her car windshield, tucked under the wiper blade. Same white envelope, same red ink. "I see you," it simply stated. This was different. This meant someone knew her car, knew her parking spot. The cold knot tightened. This wasn't a prank from the office, this was someone watching her movements, her routine. She looked around the parking garage. Empty, just shadows and the distant hum of traffic. The next morning a small velvet box sat on her doormat. No note this time, just the box. Crimson red, like the ink. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She hesitated, her hand hovering over it. What if it was something dangerous? But the curiosity, a morbid kind of pull, was stronger. She nudged it with her foot first, then slowly, she picked it up. Inside, nestled on black satin, was a small silver locket. It was old-fashioned, intricate. She didn't recognize it, but it felt strangely familiar, like a forgotten dream. She didn't open it. She couldn't, not yet. The notes continued daily, each one more specific. "You look beautiful in that blue dress today." She had worn a blue dress. "The way you bite your lip when you concentrate is adorable." How could they know that? She worked from home most days now. The blinds were always drawn. She felt like a prisoner in her own apartment. The city outside, once vibrant, now seemed full of unseen eyes. Every creak of the floorboards in the old building, every distant siren made her jump. Sleep offered no escape, only troubled dreams filled with red ink and watchful shadows. The admiration was becoming an invasion. The details in the notes became unnervingly precise. "You hum when you make tea. Earl Grey, 2 sugars. Sarah's blood ran cold. She did hum. She did drink Earl Grey with 2 sugars, but only in her kitchen, alone. How could anyone know this? The admirer wasn't just watching her outside. They knew things from inside her apartment. The thought made her skin crawl. She checked the locks. Again, and again. They were secure. Windows latched. She felt a rising tide of panic, a desperate need to understand who was doing this and more importantly how. The city buzzed outside, indifferent to her terror. She started to document everything, each note, each strange occurrence. She took pictures, she wrote down dates and times. The police had been unhelpful. "It's probably just a secret admirer, miss," the officer had said, a dismissive tone in his voice. "They'll get bored." But this didn't feel like someone who would get bored. This felt like an obsession. A dangerous one. The handwriting, still meticulously neat, started to show subtle changes. A slight tremor here, a heavier pressure on the downstrokes there. As if the admirer was struggling to maintain control, or perhaps they were becoming more excited. One note mentioned a childhood memory, a small, insignificant detail about a lost toy, a stuffed bear named Barnaby. She hadn't thought of Barnaby in 20 years. How could anyone know about Barnaby? Her parents were gone, her only brother lived overseas. She had no old friends in this city. The past, a place she thought was safely buried, was being exhumed. By whom? The admirer seemed to possess an almost supernatural knowledge of her life, her secrets, her vulnerabilities. The notes were no longer compliments. They were assertions of intimacy, unearned and deeply unsettling. The feeling of being watched was constant. It was a physical presence, a weight on her chest. She imagined eyes peering through cracks in the walls, a breath on the back of her neck when she was alone. She started talking to herself, a low murmur, just to break the oppressive silence. "Who are you?" she'd whisper to the empty rooms. "What do you want?" The only reply was the steady drip of the leaky faucet in the bathroom, a sound that now seemed to mock her growing fear. Her home, once a sanctuary, had become a cage and the admirer held the key. A new note arrived. This one was different. It wasn't on the usual expensive card. It was on a torn piece of a utility bill. The red ink was still there but smudged. "I miss our talks," it read. "You always understood." Our talks? Sarah frowned. She hadn't talked to anyone new. Not really. She replayed recent conversations. Polite exchanges with the mailman. Brief calls with her brother. Nothing that explained this. Then she saw it. Faintly on the back of the torn paper, part of a name. Eel Thompson. Daniel Thompson, her old therapist. The one she stopped seeing 5 years ago, after the incident. Her mind reeled. Daniel? Dr. Thompson? He had been kind, understanding. But there was always something, a little too intense in his gaze. a little too interested in the darker corners of her past. She had dismissed it then. Professional concern, she told herself. But now, the memory of his office, the way he'd lean forward, his eyes never leaving hers, sent a shiver down her spine. He knew about Barnaby. He knew about her habits. He knew everything because she had told him, in confidence, in the supposed safety of his consulting room. The trust she had placed in him now felt like a betrayal of herself. She found his old business card. The address was for an office across town, but he had moved. She remembered him mentioning it in their last session. A new practice, closer to her old neighborhood. She searched online, Daniel Thompson, psychotherapist, a new website, a new address. Chillingly close to her current apartment, just a few blocks away. Had he followed her? Or was this a horrifying coincidence? The neat handwriting on the notes suddenly made sense. Precise, controlled, just like his clinical notes had been. The red ink, a desperate cry for attention, or a symbol of something far more sinister. She had to be sure. She remembered he always used a specific brand of expensive, slightly scented paper for his personal correspondence. She still had a sympathy note he'd sent when her mother passed. She rummaged through an old box of letters. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely sort through the envelopes. There it was, a cream-colored envelope, and inside, a card. The paper felt identical to the first notes. The scent, faint but unmistakable, was the same. It was him, Daniel Thompson, her therapist, her confidant, her secret admirer, her tormentor. The revelation hit her with the force of a physical blow. She didn't call the police, not yet. What would she say? That her former therapist was sending her love notes? They hadn't believed her before. They wouldn't believe her now without more. She needed proof. Undeniable proof. She thought about confronting him. But the thought of facing him, knowing what she knew, filled her with a paralyzing fear. He was a man who knew her deepest anxieties, her breaking points. He could twist anything she said. He could make her seem like the one who was obsessed. He was clever. He was always clever. That was his profession. She decided to set a trap. A small, desperate plan formed in her mind. She wrote a note of her own, on plain paper in simple black ink. "I know who you are," it said. "Meet me at the old pier, midnight, if you want to talk." She left it under her own door where he always left his. Then she waited. The hours crawled by. Every sound made her heart leap. Was he watching? Did he see her leave the note? Midnight arrived. The pier was deserted, shrouded in fog. The air was cold and damp. She waited in the shadows, her breath catching in her throat. He didn't come. Defeated, she returned to her apartment. The note she had left was gone. He had taken it. But he hadn't come to the pier. Why? She unlocked her door, her body heavy with exhaustion and a lingering dread. The apartment was dark. Silent. She flicked on the light in the hallway, and there, sitting on her small kitchen table, was a single red rose. Next to it, a new note. Same red ink. Same neat script. "I'm always here, Sarah. We don't need to meet. We're already closer than you think." Her blood turned to ice. He had been in her apartment while she was out. She backed away slowly. Her eyes darted around the room. Then she saw it. A faint reflection in the darkened screen of her television. A figure, standing in the doorway of her bedroom, motionless, just watching. She didn't scream. She couldn't. A slow smile spread across the reflected face. It was Daniel, but his eyes. They were not the kind eyes of the therapist she remembered. They were cold, possessive, triumphant. And then a voice, soft and chillingly familiar, whispered from right behind her, "Did you really think you could escape me, Sarah? We're just getting started." It wasn't Daniel's voice. It was her own brother's, standing beside Daniel, smiling.